I forgot to show my summary in the fats lecture that I just gave. So this is the conclusion of the last one, that as you go to less and less saturation, you can go to a higher temperature with those fats without as much rancidity. And the conclusion here, to wrap this together, we're going to categorize the three elements, group together the ideas into the three elements of nutrition of what, when, and water. So in terms of what you're eating, a kind of simple, summarized way of thinking about the food groups is as a color wheel. If you've got an imagination, imagine each one a different color. And we've got dietary fats, protein, starches, and produce, fruits and vegetables. And the starches are your glucose source for your activity levels. Your cells want glucose to generate adenosine triphosphate, ATP. That is their main fuel molecule. They, of course, you're burning proteins, you're burning fats, you're burning sugars, and all three of those are to generate adenosine triphosphate, ATP. And exercise drops the glucose levels in your muscle, and muscle has carbohydrate response element binding proteins, which are sensors for how much sugar there is in muscle. So your muscle fibers know, in a sense, that they're low in sugar because of your workout, glucose specifically. And until your muscle fibers have recovered that glucose, they will keep your blood sugar low. So a morning workout, if you don't eat any glucose afterwards, and in the next meal, because you're trying to lose weight, let's say, and so you're not eating anything after exercise, and you're having a salad at lunch, and you won't even put the croutons on the salad, so there's no glucose anywhere, just a little bit of glucose in the tomato on the salad, a tiny bit in the broccoli, but nothing near what you're losing in your exercise. And you're going to end up with a low blood sugar that skyrockets your cravings at the end of the day, where you can't stop eating sugar sources. And if you're really health conscious, you might eat almonds instead, but you'll eat over 1,000 calories of almonds and the cravings still aren't gone, because you're trying to put an oil fire out with water. The oil fire is that your blood sugar's low and you're trying to put it out with almonds. That won't work. The cravings won't go away until you have a stable, strong blood sugar, which means that you're not under or overeating carbohydrate. Because overeating carbohydrate, the sugars will enter the bloodstream faster than your lean tissue can absorb them, and the insulin response will drive your blood sugar back down. But if you don't eat any carbohydrates at all, then your blood sugar is going to stay low. So those are the two ways to end up with a low blood sugar. To not eat any, or to eat carbs of a type and amount of processing, like breads and things that have been ground into flour, that digest too fast. So you might be under eating. You need 600 calories at your lunch for everything that you're doing. Instead, you eat a 200-calorie candy bar, so you're under eating. But that 200-calorie candy bar digests 3 times faster than the meal would have, even though the meal is 3 times higher in calories. You have a 600-calorie meal with half of which is carbs, 300 calories, which is in the broccoli and the spinach, let's say in the salad, plus a piece of bread that's 100 calories. You might even add a small dessert to that and make it a 700-calorie meal with 400 calories of carb. It's still going to digest slower than the sugars in the candy bar or the ice cream or the frozen yogurt that you're eating. So it's the rate that the sugars come into your bloodstream that really matters in terms of how those calories are partitioned between lean tissue and adipose tissue. Vegetables will slow down the starches. So if you're really active, you can't use fruits and vegetables to recover all the sugar losses in your muscle, because half the sugar in fruits and vegetables and sweets and candy and table sugar, and it's the same digestible sugars as in broccoli, even though most of the sugar in broccoli and other vegetables are bound up as fiber, but the digestible sugars in vegetables are identical to table sugar and identical to what's in fruit. So the digestible calories in broccoli is the same as the digestible calories in cake. It's sucrose. And half of sucrose is fructose. And that half, that fructose, has to be converted into glucose in the liver, and the liver can't do that faster than 1 to 2 calories per minute. So if fructose floods into your bloodstream and liver because you're drinking fruit juice or eating too much cake or eating candy bars, then the liver cannot keep up with the conversion into glucose and generates cholesterol and triglyceride instead, which is why Robert Lustig up at UCSF says that sugar is a toxin. It's poisonous. Sugar, the Bitter Truth is one of his published papers. It's fructose in specific, which most of us consume in the form of sucrose, which is fructose and glucose put together. So a banana, orange juice, sweets, half of all that is fructose. You didn't work out on your liver. You worked out on your muscles. You lost glucose. So you need to eat bread, pasta, rice. But if it enters your bloodstream too fast, it goes to fat, it's as if you didn't eat anything at all. So you go with the slowest digesting starchy foods. Lentils and beans, so legumes, very slow digesting, glycemic index between 40 and 50, meaning it digests about 40 to 50% as fast as eating pure glucose. Corn kernels, glycemic index of 60 to 65, also very slow. Corn is not going to increase body fat unless you pop it into popcorn or grind it to make bread or corn flakes or something. Once you've processed it, then it's going to digest a lot faster. So you get cereal grains or legumes or tubers into their slowest digesting state. Include the potato skin in what you're eating, and have cereals and breads where you can see the granularity of the grains, where it's not ground down into flour, so flourless breads or with very little flour in it, mainly unground grains. And then use vegetables to further slow down those starches. If you're a really active person, you need the glucose, not the sweets, not the fruit, and not the vegetables to fuel your muscle. You need the starch to fuel your muscle, because the sweets, fruits, and vegetables send as much fructose to your liver as they send glucose to your muscle, brain, and other lean tissues. It overloads the liver. You cannot keep up with a high-activity life or a lot of exercise with just sweets, vegetables, and fruits. It overloads the liver. So for your activity, you use glucose. So after exercise, don't use a banana. Don't use orange juice. Use a starch, pretzels, a piece of pastry, a bagel. If there's a little bit of table sugar added, like in a donut, that's fine, as long as there's flour there. 200 calorie limit is probably reasonable. If you're athletic, in really good shape, and you worked out hard, you could handle 300 calories like your typical bagel. But just eating a bagel or a donut by itself, when you didn't just contract your muscles really hard, much of that is likely to go to body fat, and you might end up with a lower blood sugar than before you ate that thing, making you hungrier, less mentally focused, lower physical energy, because the carbs came in too quickly. So carbohydrates are tricky. You need to include them, particularly with an active lifestyle. You need to include starches. Don't overload the liver in response to your exercise by using fruit or vegetables or sweets. And the sweets would probably kick in with the cravings at the end of the day. You use starches. Fruits and vegetables are if you're not as active, if you're not exercising a ton, then you don't need any starches at all. Fruits and vegetables is all you need if you're not very active. The Institute of Medicine tells us we need about 500 calories of carbohydrate per day. The liver can produce almost half of that. So a few hundred calories of fruits and vegetables. You could think of the higher calorie vegetables, the beets, tomatoes, carrots, functionally as fruit. So put some carrots and tomatoes onto your salad to help you with stabilize and strengthen your blood sugar so you have more mental focus and more physical energy and don't end up with tons of cravings later on. You don't need starches. And if you want to add a starch but stay lean, use legumes, lentils, and beans. Their glycemic index is really slow. Combining legumes with vegetables that slows them down even more, that's about the fastest, healthy, long-term weight loss approach that I can imagine. But we all get a sweet tooth. We're born loving sugars twice as much as our own mothers, if crying reduction rate has anything to say on what we love. course, love is complex. We're just talking about opioids and the analgesic effect, or the pain-reducing effect of sugars versus maternal breastfeeding. So when we look at this food wheel here, dietary fats could range, it could be almost half of all the calories you're eating. The Mediterranean diet's 45% of the calories is fats. I wouldn't go less than around 20 to 30%. So here's 25% of your total calories. Wouldn't go much less than that. You could go as much as twice that. But if you're working out a lot, then you need starches to recover your fuel in your muscle. You need protein to recover the damage in the days following. So you need to include enough starch and protein for your training, which squeezes down a little bit the percentage of your calories that's fats. It might not change how much fat you're eating, but your exercise increases your starch and protein needs more than it increases your dietary fat need. You do have more needs for unsaturated fats with training, but not as much more as your losses from sugar in your muscle and the protein that you need to recover the damage. So with training, the starch amount increases, the protein amount increases. So this is for recovery of your fuel losses, recovery of the damage, and your dietary fats may stay the same. And the amount of fruits and vegetables that you're eating is for health, and the coarseness of your vegetables and how much you're eating of vegetables is to help you slow down the starches, so that all the starches that you're eating, either for your activity levels or because you have a sweet tooth or because you like white carbs like pasta and bread, so whether you need them or not, you want to slow them down with vegetables. That's the what piece. Balancing out your meals and adjusting them based on your activity levels, and ratioing your vegetables to starches based on how much starch you're eating and how lean you want to be. In terms of when you're eating, you want to space your nutrients out. There's two ways that you do that. One is by eating evenly through your day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, with breakfast within an hour of waking, dinner not closer, if possible, than 3 hours before bed, hopefully 4 hours before bed. You don't want to go to bed with a bunch of undigested food. There's less movement of the body, lower metabolic rate as you're sleeping, so a higher percentage of the calories that digest while you're sleeping go to body fat because less is absorbed into lean tissues. You're not moving, there's no postural muscles, than when you're awake. And it takes water to digest calories. Blood will not absorb anything that's thicker than it is. So water has to go from your cells to your bloodstream to your intestine to dilute those nutrients before it can be reabsorbed. So digestion is a dehydrating process, and dehydration reduces brain function, and sleep is a brain function. So you will be more unrested when you wake up. So eating soon before bed does not give you time to drink fluids during the digestion process, and you will be more dehydrated than if you had eaten earlier and had time to drink some water. So space your calories out as early as possible with breakfast, but not as late as possible with dinner. You want a few hours there at least so that you can get some fluids in. And if your dinner is 6 or more hours before bed, your blood sugar and blood protein's going to be dropping by the 6-hour point as you're going to bed. So then you should add a snack 1 or 2 hours before you go to bed, just 100 or 200 calories that you can easily digest in that 1 or 2 hours before bed. So not a larger amount of calories that would take more time to digest, just a small amount of calories that you can easily digest in a couple hours. And that would be, for example, some fruit on some yogurt, or a little bit of granola on some yogurt, where you're using the yogurt as the base as opposed to a starch like the granola as the base. Or dipping vegetable pieces into hummus. So you're putting 2 different food groups together. In a meal, you'll use all 4 food groups. But in a snack, what you want to do is use any fat or protein with any carbohydrate. Fats and proteins stimulate cholecystokinin, a cholesterol-based hormone release, and leptin release. So you have a long-term 3 or 4 hour hunger suppression from the dietary fats and or protein, and the carbohydrates will bump up your blood sugar to reduce hunger if it's a starch or a fruit, and doesn't spike your blood sugar, right, because that will make you hungrier. And vegetables bulks up your stomach faster, so there's pressure sensors that reduce your hunger right away. So whether it's because of the bulk in the stomach or because it bumped up your blood sugar slightly, carbohydrates of any form reduce hunger immediately, whereas fats and proteins reduce hunger long term. If you just try to use a fat to reduce hunger, like almonds, you end up eating 1,000 calories before your stomach's full enough to stop the hunger. But 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours later, you're still not hungry. But it takes too much at first. If you eat an apple, it reduces hunger right away, but an hour later, you're hungry again. So you have the apple with the almonds, the fruit together with the yogurt, the vegetable pieces with the hummus. So you're putting two different food groups together, fat or protein with any carbohydrate source. So if you put a snack in between meals, then that can help you space out the calories. You don't have to do that if you choose foods in your meals that take 6 hours to digest, because then you easily make it to the next meal with a very strong blood chemistry. Blood protein, blood sugar, blood fat levels, everything is strong, nutrient levels are strong. But if you're eating very small meals, they're not getting you to the next meal, you're looking for candy and things, and you're getting cravings, then put a healthy snack with a fat or protein together with a carbohydrate at the midway point between the meals. So slowing the digestion helps you pace out nutrients, and evening out the timing through your day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, possibly 1, 2, even 3 snacks in there, that will also space out your nutrients. So that's the timing. And then the water piece, there's a few things to think about. You need a liter for every 1,000 calories that you eat. At least half of your fluids should be water. And you want to think about your fluid retention. If there's a lot of tea or coffee that's inducing diuresis, so if you reduce your coffee by half or eliminate it completely for a day or two, and you replace it with the exact same amount of water, if your urination rate drops, then that means that you're inducing diuresis with the amount that you're drinking. So you can just test it and find out right away, easily, just by not drinking it for a day or two. Of course, that might not be so easy, but it can be tested, so you don't have to wonder or guess on whether you're crossing over into diuresis with the amount of tea or coffee that you're consuming. Herbal tea is much smaller diuretic, much smaller than regular teas, and decaffeinated coffee is also much lower diuretic effect, but there's a compound that is specifically in the beans, the type of beans that have the bolder flavor, that are used with decaffeination because they lose some of the boldness, so they have to start out being more of a bold flavor than your typical coffee bean. And a specific compound in those beans for each cup of coffee that you drink per day of decaffeinated increases blood cholesterol levels by 2 milligrams per deciliter. So decaffeinated coffee also has its own small but significant negative that comes with it. I have yet to see anything in nutrition that is only a benefit with no potential negatives regardless of how much you consume of it. Not even spring water, as I've pointed out a few times. So a liter for every 1,000 calories that you eat. So if you're eating 2,000 calories a day, that's 2 quarts or liters, which is 8 cups. If you eat 3,000 calories a day, that's 3 quarts or liters, which is 12 cups. You want it spaced through your day, just like the rest of your nutrients, and you want to have at least half of it as water. So always an equal volume of water first, and then whatever else you're drinking, like coffee or soda. And think about your retention. How much of your fluids are you retaining? So if you have high diuretic intake, which might not even be that much, it might only be 2 cups of coffee for you, and you're already experiencing diuresis, but also very high or low salt intake. So if you perspire a lot, you're working out hard, and you never eat salt, then there's not enough salt in your body to hold on to the fluids, and you urinate everything out. Even if you drink 5 gallons a day, you're still dehydrated. And if you don't work out that hard or don't sweat a lot, then If you eat out a lot or add a lot of salt to your foods, then your body will be high in salt. And every time you drink water, your body's going to use that water to get rid of that high salt level. So if you're really high in salt or really low in salt compared to what you're losing, then you won't be able to hold on to your fluids. You'll be going to the bathroom frequently. Your sleep quality will be lower, wake up less rested, and possibly a worse digestion rate. So if you have a hard time falling asleep, particularly after the first 4-hour REM cycle, and you're thinking that you're having an allergic response to over a dozen different foods, and you have indigestion a lot, then start looking at your salt balance relative to how much you might be losing, or thinking about maybe not drinking a pot of coffee or 5 tea bags worth of tea through your afternoon. So those are some things to think about in addition to, are you getting a liter of fluid spaced evenly throughout your day for every 1,000 calories. So in a nutshell, you want to think about what you're eating, when, spacing it throughout the day, and water, spacing it out, and your ability to retain it.